Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast. Pastor Paul with you on the Post-Evangelical podcast. And as we recorded this podcast, it was January 5th. We were preparing to observe what I believe is going to be a day of sadness, a day of reflection of what happened to us in a season, January 6th, a year after the insurrection, when a group of people, right-wing people, many of whom were evangelical Christians, tried to overthrow democracy in America. January 6, 2021, a day when the Evangelical Church that had been taken over by this right-wing political thought tried to overthrow democracy in America. I think it's a day that the Christian church should have been very reflective of, should have stopped and said, whoa, wait a second, how did we get here? And I don't think they did. My friend Bob Prater, who's an awesome author and great person, is going to join me in this podcast today. And we're going to take a one-year retrospective look at what does it mean to have the Christian church involved in an insurrection, and can we look back now? As we talk to Bob on this edition of the Post-Evangelical Podcast with Pastor Paul. Good to see you. And even though we're both smiling because we enjoy being together and having discussion, as we think about the fact that we're a year removed from a near overthrow of our democratic system, it is somewhat a day to be somber, isn't it?
Not somewhat. It's a day to truly reflect on where we've been. But at the same time, Paul, I carry reflection in this hand and hope in this one. So I've still got tons of hope for, I do. I still always believe the best, and time will tell. I've been proven wrong before, by the way, but we'll see.
Well, let's look back at a year ago. Like, what were you doing on January 6th? And what are your recollections as you think about that day 1 year ago?
Well, Paul, like most everybody, I was glued to the media. I was glued to my television set, to my phone. I was in shock over things happening in our country. I remember it reminded me of the day that 9/11, when we were attacked. And my entire life growing up, I was thinking, we're not like other countries. We don't have violence on our shores.
Right.
This way. And then all of a sudden we did, and I didn't feel as safe, although, it was what it was. And we kind of reflected like we are now, and we figured a way forward. We're going to do the same thing here. But that's what it reminded me of. As I saw these people, most of them super earnest and sincere in their belief because their leaders told them lies.
Yeah.
It broke my heart. And I realized, hey, this is just like what has happened in Russia. This is just like what has happened in China. This is just like what has happened in every country that we have stood smugly and said, well, at least we're not them. Well, guess what?
And we go monitor their elections for them and, all of those things because we are the piety of democracy in all the world.
Reflection. But again, I think for me, and I'm just only speaking for me, Paul, it's important to delineate the difference between the leaders who incited versus the followers who responded. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you broke up just a little bit on me there, but so I always am going to blame the leadership. And when I look at evangelicalism right now, absolutely, there are leading voices who are saying absolute false things. And I think even cynically, the Republican Party made decisions in the late 70s to like, hey, we're going to do things to manipulate Christian voters so that we can, because otherwise we're not going to win any elections ever again. They realized that the Republican thinking was shrinking in popularity in the United States. So they realized, like, hey, we can build ourselves around this idea of Christianity, single issue voters, abortion, and we can manipulate Christian votes. So I think, and somehow, I don't know if they knew this purposefully or they stumbled on it by then evangelicalism marrying this with sort of this end times philosophy, eschatology, right. That then, all kinds of conspiracy theories could be believed and you could do all kinds of manipulation on people. So I do blame the leaders. But I also at the same time then say, hey, we all have choices to make in life. We all have ways to reach out to different thoughts, right. And hear different points of view. And it was me, Bob. I had to say, like, wow, listening to Rush Limbaugh is not serving me well. It's not helping. It's making me angry. It's making me angry at people. It's making me see people in black and white binary terms as good and evil. And I don't want to be that person. And so I stopped listening to Rush Limbaugh. And so to me, there's tons of information out there saying, hey, get differing opinions into your life. So people have got to start saying, okay, I'm going to hear other diverse opinions so I know what's good and right. So the blame goes all the way around. And yes, I'm kind of with you. I do blame the leaders a little bit more.
Yeah, same here. And this reminds me of we did a Zoom yesterday, you and I.
Yeah,
just a private thing, just to kind of catch up with each other. And you happened to be in front of a painting that really, really struck me in a very big way. It was that painting, which was nothing but blacks, whites, grays, off whites, off blacks. Just
you're talking about colors, not people.
Colors, yeah, not people. Colors, and they were all on the canvas, and I thought it was stunning. But what I took from it was, so often we get caught in this binary thinking. It's either black or it's white. You just talked about Rush Limbaugh, where we were, I got sucked into that too when it first started, where we were told it was, we had permission to hate people who disagreed with us all of a sudden. And that was new a little bit. I don't blame Rush Limbaugh for that, but it was new for me. And then to think that God must be that. He must be black and white. There's right and there's wrong. There's no in between. And I'm telling you, we are nuanced. We are nuanced in the way we think.
Yeah.
And God is too. He understands the depth. I mean, there's a scripture that talks about he understands who we are. He understands that we're human. We're going to make these mistakes. It's one of the reasons that 2 Corinthians 5 is so important to me, where it says, he's no longer counting our sins against us. He's just done. Hey, I'm not doing it anymore. You know who counts the sins? The church. You know who else counts the sins? The media. And this is what we use against each other. We see people, quote unquote, that's sin. And bang, we are all over it. And religion has certainly played a part in where we are today. And it played a part in January 6th. There's nobody that's going to tell me that didn't have a part in it.
I think it played a big part in it.
Yeah.
I would just want to, just in memory of January 6th, I want to show a quick clip of what happened that day. And I think it's important that we play clips like this, because there is a narrative playing out there of like, oh, it wasn't a big deal. Oh, one of our congressmen on the floor of Congress even said it was like a Sunday tour of the Capitol. And so I think it's important that we remember that it was no such thing. So this is,
show me what that tour looked like.
Yeah,
what that tour looked like.
There it is. Sweet little tour. Blue Lives Matter, right? So that's just a little bit of a feel of what it looked like, of people that I'm sure would be Blue Lives Matter flag carriers attacking police in front of our Capitol. And it was no Sunday tour. It was people chanting, "Hang Mike Pence." And you know, when you think about this now, like Mike Pence is even out there now saying, "Oh, January 6th wasn't that big a deal," when his very life was in danger. And I heard a police officer the other day saying, "I risked my life to save Mike Pence from being killed in front of his children." And now Mike Pence is out there saying it wasn't that big a deal. These are Christian people. Mike Pence is revered by Christians as this great Christian man that won't even meet with a woman one-on-one. If Christianity gives you permission to be that dishonest, then if any religion gives you permission to be that dishonest for some good end, it's not a religion worth following, in my book.
I'm with you. And unfortunately, that's what all religions have the possibility of becoming true.
Let me interrupt this podcast for just a moment. I hope you're enjoying our conversation with Bob Prater, but I want to tell you about an opportunity to work on you and ask the question, am I happy? Am I even supposed to be happy? Are we just supposed to care about others, or is it okay for us to care about ourselves? I call living in this way the airplane mask theory of life. It's important that when that airplane mask falls down, they tell you to do what? Put yours on first. If you don't put your mask on first, you might not have the resources to help anybody else. It's the same with our emotional and spiritual well-being. If I'm not taking care of me, I'm not going to have resource to provide good help and support to others. It's even in the commandments of Jesus Christ in the Bible when he said, love your neighbor as yourself. The implication in that is, if you can't love yourself, how can you love others? If you feel uncomfortable with the question, am I good? Do I deserve good things to happen in my life? You and I need to hang out. That's why I want you to check out Pastor Paul's coaching in my Reconstruction You coaching cohorts. We may be deconstructing some of our life, but now we're reconstructing into what do we look like in the next season of our life? What do we look like when we put on our oxygen mask and start to maintain our emotional and spiritual well-being? And I want to tell you more about it at a webinar I have coming up called Am I Happy? Am I Even Supposed to Be Happy? You see, we have 2 sessions coming up in January, and I'll be telling you what it looks like to coach with Pastor Paul in a Reconstruction You coaching cohort. You can find more information at my website there, pastor-paul.com. Don't forget that dash, pastor-paul.com. And as well as being able to find out more information about the webinar, sign up for the webinar, and also find out more about my Reconstruction You coaching cohorts, don't tell anybody. You'll get to visit my brand new website, which the public isn't going to know about until later in 2022. It's a little bit messy. There are still things being designed. You may find some mistakes. You may even find some broken links, and you get to be my web team to help fix all of those things. And in the meantime, find out about the Am I Happy webinar. It's absolutely free, and you'll find out more about how you can jump into coaching with Pastor Paul for this next season. Listen, you are good, and you do deserve good things to happen. Let me show you why with coaching that'll start to change your self-story, your identity, and the mindset through which you interact with the world. It can be changed. I've seen it happen for so many people in my coaching over the past few years. The stories are incredible of people who have even said, I'm working in a career that I should not be in. It is making me miserable, making my family miserable, and I'm going to change and be empowered to do what life has for me to do, for my vision and purpose of life to be fulfilled. That can be your story. Let me show you how through coaching with Pastor Paul and a Reconstruction You coaching cohort. And to kick it off, join me for the Am I Happy webinar, absolutely free with no obligation, coming in mid-January. Again, pastor-paul.com is the website, and come join me for the webinar, and let's make your New Year's resolution stay stand up this time. What do you say? Join me. Am I happy? Am I even supposed to be happy? And absolutely free Pastor Paul coaching webinar. We'll see you there.
It's like the great author Anne Lamott said, and this is the quote from it's the very first thing in the book that I was involved in.
By the way, this is Bob's book.
That one right there, A Language of Healing for a Polarized Nation. If you look in that book, the very first quote is from Anne Lamott, and it says, when God hates all the same people we do, when our God hates all the same people we do, we can pretty much be guaranteed that we have created God in our image, not the other way around.
Yeah. And when you think about, there was a big Jesus Saves flag that was prominent going into the Capitol as the people were storming the Capitol building. There were people out in front with a cross praying. Then, of course, crazy, buffalo head guy, the shaman, got into was it the Senate floor he was on or the House? I can't remember.
I don't know.
But then he stopped everybody. Wait. We have to pray.
We have to pray.
And he says this a prayer that would fit in any evangelical church of our tradition, you and me, Bob, this very well done evangelical prayer, thanking Jesus for getting them illegally into the Capitol building of the United States of America. That's how corrupt.
Well, not just getting them safely in. There were a couple of dead bodies left behind.
Absolutely.
And they had the temerity, the audacity to stand there and thank Jesus for allowing them to be part of those people's deaths as they completely invaded the Capitol. Yeah. Paul, this is as sick and twisted as any chapter of our history, maybe more so. This is way more insidious even than the Civil War, because the Civil War was over one thing, one issue, and it all came down to money, but it was slavery. And this for being a black and white world right now, the way people see it, this is super nuanced. There are levels to this that go deep, and I'm not even sure what the answers are from here, other than a complete heart change for our country, and especially for the evangelical church in this country. And I don't care if you attend a church where they have not spoken against this, then chances are they might be for it. And
that's a great point. I want to hit that. I do want to say on the Jesus Saves flag made it into the building. Somebody's telling me on the YouTube comments up here. What flags did we see inside the Capitol that day? We saw the Jesus Saves flag. We saw the American flag distorted with Trump paraphernalia around it. And what other flag? The Confederate flag, the Don't Tread on Me flag.
And don't tread on me.
The sad thing to me in evangelicalism of our tradition is that the Jesus Saves flag and the Confederate flag now are very closely aligned together.
Yeah.
And that should be abhorrent to anybody in our religious tradition. And as you said, and I think you nailed it, any particularly white evangelical church leader, and I say white as a cultural term rather than a skin tone, a culturally white church leader who's not speaking out against this, I believe is complicit to the problem.
100%.
Yeah.
And I've sat with pastors and had this conversation. And they, and I've sat with pastors who have said, no, I'm not anti this. I'm not this. I'm not for that. Well, then why aren't you saying that? Because I don't want to lose people.
Yeah.
I've got friends.
Can't afford to lose the tithers, man.
No, I've got friends across the country that began, and I'm not going to tell you their names. People would know them maybe. But they began putting things online from like Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Oh.
And it was Marjorie. The last one I saw was a video of Marjorie Taylor Greene disparaging everything about January 6th, disparaging masks for COVID, and disparaging anyone with who she disagrees, and with really bold language. So I got a hold of these folks who are very, very dear to me. And I said, hey, what's going on? Well, this is what our followers want. This is what they're asking for. And so we're just giving them, we don't necessarily believe this. And my words to them, I know we're in this whole thing of, shame off of you, but shame on you.
Yeah. Shame
on you. Not just for not speaking up, but for passively going along. This is how Germany happened. This is how the Nazis came into power. We didn't speak up.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt. I saw a great meme yesterday that it was Klansmen on one side saying, kill black people. I hope I don't get my live kicked off TikTok for saying, but basically kill a race of people.
Right.
People on the other side of African Americans holding up signs saying, we demand our civil rights. And then somebody that had Christian written across their shirt holding up compromise. As you cannot compromise between those two. Right now, I hear it all the time from people. Why don't you critique both sides? Well, we've got one side arguing what level of service the federal government should be giving to people, and another side calling the other side pedophile baby eaters. There's not compromise to be had.
It's not an equal argument. One of these is not like the other, right?
That's a false equivalency to try to say, well, let's find a happy medium between the two. How many of you can we execute publicly? Because I have friends, and I know you do too, Bob, who were very close friends, leaders of evangelical ministries and churches who believe we're going to see public execution. Like they still believe we're going to see Joe Biden, the president of the United States, publicly executed. Even better. And I almost hate to say this, but we're going to see John McCain publicly executed. The dead John McCain publicly
because they believe he's still alive.
Yes.
Just like he's living with Elvis in Guantanamo Bay.
Yes.
So
JFK Jr.
I mean, what the hell? Where are we?
Yeah.
How did this happen? Listen, my own state senator, who I love, Shannon Grove, I'll just say her name.
Yeah.
She's a pretty powerful politician in this state. That on January 6th, she was retweeting Lynn Wood, who was one of the attorneys involved in all of this. She was retweeting stuff like this was not Trump's people, this was Antifa. She was retweeting him left and right. And Shannon, if you happen to see this, I think I've proven to you over the years how much I love you. But you are lost if you continue down this road, just like I've told you privately. You need to listen to different voices, Shannon. So let me just say that. Sorry.
By the way, it's a nice day here because as of today, Devin Nunes is no longer our congressman.
Woo!
Yes.
Well, he's the president of a tech startup. Let it be. That's where he belongs.
There's a bit of a wrestling match here, though, because, in some ways, I think people just say, oh, you're talking about the crazy fringe of evangelicalism. That crazy fringe has become much, much, much closer to the norm than it used to be. But even so, I do think what we see on January 6th of 2021 are some people who have grown up in an environment where, remember, did you ever used to sing the song Onward Christian Soldiers at youth camp as kids? We would take that Christian flag and the American flag, walking forward down the aisle, singing Onward Christian Soldiers, marching as to war with the cross of Jesus going on before. We were taught that we are at war with the world, that the world hates us, and we will be attacked, and we're going to have to fight back. Don Jr., even the other day at that Nutball Centerpoint USA event, said, hey guys, I know what the Bible says, but turning the other cheek isn't working. We can't do that anymore. You know, this is the Christian party. And yes, there are extreme fringes that are doing extreme things, but it is mainstream in our teaching in evangelical churches that we are at war with anybody who's not a Christian, and it gives permission to do what we saw in that video.
You know, Paul, maybe it's time to redefine the word Christian.
That's true.
Seriously, maybe it's time to take a fresh look at what that means. Because there's a lot of folks who are using that word, and it's like that scene in the Princess Bride. I do not think that means what you think it means. Because to me, a Christian lays his life down for others. To me, a Christian doesn't seek his own way. To me, a Christian is not consumed with money and power. And yet, here we are. Here we are.
You know, I was asking where you were on January 6th. I had been scheduled to do a live Facebook event the night of January 6th, and it had been scheduled weeks before that. And so certainly insurrection was not the topic we had planned to talk about that night, but it was an event with a predominantly African-American AMC church in Wichita, Kansas. And I was horrified by what I had seen on January 6th. But if you remember the time, you know, we were in the middle of the George Floyd discussions, the BLM, you know, events, riots, even all of those things. And so here I am on a podcast with three Christian African-American evangelical people. And I began to realize, because of course, January 6th, the insurrection took over our conversation. And I remember all of a sudden I realized, like, oh, this is impacting these three people much differently and at a much deeper level than me. My country was threatened today, my ideological belief, but for them to see how white people, and particularly white Christians, would look at and talk about BLM,
Right.
talk about riots and thugs, and be so incensed that an iPod got stolen from a business, and then be somewhat nonplussed about a white riot, hit them very, very deeply. And no matter how hard we try to say it's not, race is at the core of this. When you start carrying around Confederate flags next to the onward Christian soldiers' flags, I think we're realizing in this season, Bob, that these cultural divides, the belief that our white evangelical culture is supreme to other cultures, or that we don't even have a culture, we just are culture, and everybody else needs to come into it, is right at the heart of the problem of these issues.
Yeah, you're 100% right. We will tell you what to think. We will tell you how to think. And that's what's normal in this new culture. Now, I'm a big fan of empathy. I like to say crawl inside somebody else's skin and feel what they feel. But as much as I try, I can't really even fathom what a person of color has gone through in this country, and how they then process events like January 6th. I would imagine it would be at a much, much deeper level, because you're right. Race is at it's the center point. It has been forever. It has been forever, as we talk about. I've got a gardener coming, so
do you?
They're not here yet. Yeah. So we just continue to have our eyes open. I wish I could feel. I do my best, but I know that I'm not feeling accurately what they feel. Yeah. I know I'm not going to bed frightened. I didn't have to talk to my children about if you're pulled over by a policeman. And And, I've told you before, I played basketball in Bakersfield, California for 25 years. So I was haunting the parks and the gyms. And so many of my friends were friends of color. I don't know a single African-American man with sons who did not have to have that talk. I don't know a single African-American man in my circle who has not been pulled over simply because he was driving while black. I just don't. So, yeah, I can talk about empathy. I can talk about climbing into someone else's skin and feeling what they feel, but it's impossible to feel unless I can change the color of my skin, which I can't. The things that we have done in the name of religion, in the name of money and power in this country. I mean, my gosh, slavery was about money and power.
Yeah.
Here we go. It's always the same. This is a bit of a reckoning. We're okay. That's why I have hope.
Okay.
Reckonings are good. Reckonings are okay. And they're necessary. They're necessary. Right now, that's a mirror being held up to us as a nation saying, do you like what you see? And some people are saying, hell yeah, I like it. I want more of it. It's about time. It's like that guy that stood up with Charlie Kirk and said, when do we get to start killing them?
Yeah.
When?
And General Flynn then saying, it's about time. It's about time.
That guy was a general.
Yeah.
He was. Do you realize how important a general is and how well educated they've got to be and well versed? That's a leader.
Yeah.
Holy moly. Go ahead. Sorry.
And those guys are sending the signals out. I truly have, and I thought January 6th last year would be a mirror that would cause evangelical leaders to go, wait a second. We can make all our excuses in the world that we like Trump because we're for trade sanctions on China, or we're for cutting taxes, or all the other
immigration. We want to close the country.
All the other bullshit.
All of it.
But the truth is, the heart of it was the protection of cultural supremacy. This is the Republican Party figured this out in the late 70s. We can tap into this white angst, this fear that our privilege is being threatened, and create something. And Trump is the de facto bastard stepchild of that movement, of that thought. And we as the Evangelical Church need to step back and say, whoa, wait a second. We can say abortion is, but we should not want to be a part of that.
No, we absolutely 100% should not be. Now, can I tell you what encourages me?
Not yet. I'm not ready to go there yet.
Okay, fine.
No, sure. Tell me what encourages you. Go for it.
As the texts from January that week are released, I'm seeing that crazy people really aren't maybe they're not as crazy as we think in private. They're publicly crazy, like Sean Hannity, like Laura Ingraham. And yet I hear today Laura Ingraham was largely responsible for Trump pulling out of doing a press conference tomorrow to celebrate the insurrection. It's not a good idea. Please don't do this.
So when her text said it's going to undo all the great things we've done or whatever, do you think that was just her playing to Trump's childish?
Yeah, I think narcissism, the ego of a narcissist is different than your ego or mine. Right. It's just not the same. And you have to do that to get your point across. I mean, it's like he finally started talking about vaccines, but he had already told people, I'm not doing anything until they acknowledge and pay homage to me that these vaccines are even here, that it was me that did it. Jeez. And Biden finally did it a couple of weeks ago. And immediately Trump went and started doing interviews. Isn't that insane? I mean, the level of mental illness and lack of self-awareness, I can't even fathom it. I've only met a few people like that in my whole life where they really think. Can I say this, by the way?
Sure.
That their shit doesn't stink.
Of course you can say that.
Okay, sorry.
Well, I say so. We'll see if TikTok and YouTube agree.
Sorry.
That, there's always, the funny thing is every side always takes the Bible and makes it support their side and all of these things. But I do think when we look at January 6th and evangelicalism, we can look at what was happening around Jesus in the first century. And, what we know for sure is there were zealots, and the Bible talks about Jesus even had a zealot as one of his disciples. And the zealots were, can I say terrorist? Is that even fair?
They were anti-Rome.
Yeah.
They were totally for the freedom of their homeland. It kind of looks like today, doesn't it?
Yeah. They were saying, we will create chaos and that will drive Rome off. Do you need to take care of your gardener?
No, but I've got something else that I've got to take care of soon. Not yet.
Okay, you tell me when, and we can jump you out of the room, and then you can jump back in if you want. But so the zealots were running around trying to create chaos to make Rome finally say, geez, these people in this land of Palestine are crazy. We're getting out of here. And people are, there was a belief in the religious system there that, yeah, this is good because God wants Rome to be overthrown so that we can make Israel great again. And once Israel is made great again as the economic and military power of the world, God's plan can move forward on earth again. So you're absolutely right. I think it's the exact same mentality as the religious system here that believes Christianity needs to be imposed to be in charge of America so that we can make America great again, whatever that means. And once America is again the greatest military and economic power on earth, God's plan will exist on earth. And so there is a belief that any means to that end is godly. And I would say the evidence is clear. Jesus could have very easily endorsed that mindset with it could have just been one verse. Hey, Bob the Zealot, way to go. Great job, but nowhere, we never see that. And Jesus always avoided those things. And I believe he was constantly saying, by serving one another, by refusing to get into that battle, by, if forced to go a mile, go two, by turning the other cheek, Don Jr., you stupid bastard. That's how you overturn a despotic government, not with swords and cutting off ears like Peter wanted to do.
No. We would crucify Jesus all over again if he came today. I mean, all over. And your book, Joseph Comes to Town, which is a modern day retelling, kind of hints at that. I mean, Jesus came and they wanted him to overthrow the government, just like we want him to overthrow government right now. We just want what we want.
Except his name is Trump. We've replaced him with Donald Trump now. We want Trump to be our Messiah.
But here's the thing. That kind of a God, it's like, I remember one time, remember the movie Babe? The gallant pig
movie, yeah.
Pig, yeah. So the guy that was Babe's caretaker, that actor, was on he was on Jon Stewart or something. I forget what. But he brought out a picture of his guru. And whoever the host was, and I'm almost certain it was Jon Stewart, said, "How do you do that?" And the actor looked at him and said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "How do you get your God to pose for a picture that way? I can't get Jesus to ever sit down like that and do that." And I thought it was clever. I thought it was kind of funny. And he laughed too. I think his name is James Cromwell. He laughed. But we want Jesus to be a trained monkey.
Yeah.
We play the song and you start dancing, Jesus. Come on, God, what are you doing? Don't you know? And he keeps saying the same thing that he said back then. I didn't come for that. As a matter of fact, he barely talked about the government. At one point, he called Herod a fox.
Yeah.
That's about as far as he went on the anti-government stuff. Every other harsh word, of which there were legion, were for religious leaders and teachers of the law. So who do you think he'd go after today? He'd go after the John Locks.
Greg Locke.
He'd go after Greg Locke. He'd go after all of the crazies, Robert Jeffress.
Yeah.
All of them who have mistaken a flag for a cross.
Yeah. Robert Jeffress had Trump speak in his church the Sunday before Christmas.
Yeah.
I think Jesus would say that is abhorrent.
I think there's a lot of people that have labeled themselves as something that they're really not. There are a lot of wolves running around on this earth today, and Jesus would have some pretty powerful things to say. But you know what? He's not here in the flesh. And so it's up to you and me and others who follow him to tell people what he's telling us. And guys, if you're in a church where they're not talking about this stuff at all, get out.
Yeah.
Get out. If you're in a church where they are endorsing this kind of craziness, get out.
Get out.
Get out. My gosh, nobody is making you spend another minute in a place like that. You just don't have to.
Yeah. And I think you said it, a church that's not speaking against it at this point is complicit. It is
100%. Silence is not an option here. And I don't care if you're going to lose followers. I don't care if you lose constituents. I don't care if you lose churchgoers, congregations. Some things are too important. This is that moment.
I think you're absolutely right. Yeah. Because this, and it's, the whole thing is we way overuse the comparisons to Germany. But, if you ever wonder, how did that happen? How did people get to a place where they would sit and say, sure, let's exterminate a whole group of people?
When do we get to start killing people?
Yeah. I mean, I even believe like the Kyle Rittenhouse, you can argue self-defense and jury trials and all those things all day. I think there's legitimate discussion to be had there. But to bring him on the Centerpoint USA event as a hero, music blaring, his name everywhere, why is this kid a hero?
A murderer. Let me just say it. A murderer is now a hero. He went to Kenosha, Wisconsin to do damage. He wouldn't have had an assault rifle if that wasn't in his heart. And oh my gosh, his mom took him there. Yeah, you've got, there's so much of this that doesn't make sense. And I understand the law is the law, and a jury found him not guilty. But we know what he did. We know what he did, Paul. And he's a hero now.
And I would go,
that's what sells.
I would even go a step further and say, okay, even if you believe he's not a murderer, okay, somebody would say, he's not a murderer. It was self-defense. Okay, even if you believe that, why is he a hero? What makes him a hero? And can it be anything other than he went to a BLM event and he got to shoot two human beings with a weapon that is crafted for no other reason than killing human beings?
There it is.
And you're happy that somebody from your culture, your supreme culture, was able to go shoot two people at a BLM event and walk away scot-free. There's no other reason that he's being lionized, period.
Zero. I agree. By the way, your gift with words, I just have to tell you, all the people watching right now, I've known Paul for a minute, and there are few people on this planet more gifted than Paul Swearengin. I just want to say that.
Shucks. So yeah, Christians, it is a time to be looking in the mirror. January 6th ought to be a day when we're taking a critical look and saying, wow, how did we get here?
Right.
Is this okay? Is it okay if I'm like, I just don't want to speak out. I don't want to upset or offend anybody. I just want to love the Lord and worship. And I don't think that, I think it's the blessing of the season. The blessing of Trump is you don't have that option anymore. You're on one side of the fence or the other.
That's right.
And you're either endorsing a tacit cultural supremacy that's baked into a religion that has married itself to an ideology, or you're not for that.
Right.
There is no middle ground in it.
There really isn't. It's disappeared. There maybe used to be.
Maybe.
But this is the great unmasking. Isn't it interesting that during a season of putting masks on, an entire people group has been unmasked? And not all of
Now,
them.
that's a pretty good use of words right there, my friend.
That's not terrible, is it?
That's a turn of the phrase. There you go.
I've been known on occasion to come up with a little bit, but yeah, we know who they are now, and it's not everybody. I mean, let's be fair. There are people that identify as evangelical Christians who don't buy into this. To me, it runs so deep that I can no longer identify as an evangelical. I just can't. I'm a believer in Jesus. I'm a follower of Christ. The end.
And we can do that exercise of saying, yes, there are good evangelicals. I totally agree. But, Jesus said, "Oh, you Jerusalem who killed the prophets." So not every person who lived in Jerusalem had killed a prophet. I'm positive of that. I don't think there were enough prophets. What he was saying is the spirit of this place is a prophet killing spirit.
Right.
And everybody is under its I started to say influence. Maybe influence isn't there. Its impact. It's Paul talked about not flesh and blood, but principality. Yeah.
I got to run for a bit.
Okay. I'll you just jump back in and we'll grab you when you come back. Thanks,
right,
Bob. He's Bob Prater, the author of A Language of Healing for a Polarized Nation. It's a really good book to pick up. It's kind of blurred out there on YouTube. My name is Paul Swearengin, and I'm the author of Joseph Comes to Town, a novel, and a well-being coach and pastor. And by the way, we have a webinar coming up called Am I Happy? Am I Even Supposed to Be Happy? It's an emotional well-being webinar coming up here in about a week or so. And if you go to my website, pastor-paul.com, don't forget the dash, paul.com, you can find out more. And so we're talking about January 6th, 1 year later, and how does it reflect on the Evangelical Church today? I love some of the comments that we're getting on both YouTube and TikTok. Here's one from Margie. Says, "It says in the Bible, do not get involved in foolish controversies or vain imaginations." That is a perfect description of QAnon, is it not, Margie? And end times prophetic craziness. My friend Mark, how you doing, Mark? Mark says, "I'm not a Christian, but I have respect for Christian tenets. What I can understand is why there aren't more true Christians speaking out against their misguided brethren." And that's really the point that we're trying to make today in this live on TikTok with you guys and on YouTube is, why can't the Evangelical Church take this moment and as a mirror and say, wow, we've really bought into our cultural supremacy, that somehow Euro-white culture isn't really a culture. We are just what right is, and all of you need to become us to be right. White is right, right? And we should be looking in the mirror and saying, no, that is not okay. That is the opposite of who Jesus is and what Jesus taught. And so, yes, the word Christian is a dirty word in the United States. And they're like, yes, Jesus said the world would hate us. No, Jesus said, as they hated me, they'll hate you. And the people that hated him were who? The religious establishment. The religious leaders were the ones that hated Jesus, not the sinners, not those people that we want to execute because we have deep, deep, deep hatred in our hearts. It was the religious people that Jesus said, they're the ones that hate me. And I'm going to tell you today, we're probably going to talk about this on the Evangelicalish podcast tonight. I think if the Evangelical Church doesn't have some distaste for you in America, and I mean the white Evangelical Church or the culturally white Evangelical Church, if there's not some distaste from them towards you as an influencer, a social media person, somebody speaking out, then I don't think you're doing it right. I think somehow you're allowing them to be comfortable in what I believe is aberrant to the kingdom of God and to the teaching of Jesus. Scott says, a threat to white evangelical supremacy is the root of what disturbs the religio-political establishment. Yeah, absolutely. So what are your thoughts? Where were you on January 6th? What do we need to do? Oh, it says I keep freezing on TikTok. I wonder why. Gosh, I'm sure sorry about that, guys. Sweet Josh Love on TikTok says, Christianity has just gotten really ugly. Just want to distance myself from all of that. He also says, I couldn't understand the church's willingness to stand with Trump. Wife and I had not attended a church. Joey, talking about Kyle Rittenhouse, says, Kyle fulfilled their dream of being heroic by killing the libs. Isn't it the truth? Christians, it's time to look in the mirror and say, what have we become? Oh, there, Bob is back with us. And I'll tell you, I have a copy of Letter from Birmingham Jail behind me by Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. that says, hey, I knew the Klan would do what the Klan was going to do. I just couldn't imagine that the white moderates would do what they're doing. And I think were Dr. King with us today, he would say, well, I knew the QAnon extremist would do their nutball stuff. I never imagined the culturally white evangelical church would stand by and either say nothing or hedge in that direction because abortion and banning it is so important. We'll wink at all the rest of the stuff. It's
insidious. Yeah. And he even says in Letter from Birmingham Jail that it was the silence of the white church, those who privately contacted him and said, I'm with you 100%. I just can't say anything because I'll lose people or I'll XYZ. He said, that's the problem. He said, that was the shocking thing to him. And here we are again. That's why there's going to be churches you can go to that are going to be completely pro everything, but it's the ones where they're just silent.
Yeah. And he, and King said that the white moderate was saying to him, be patient. In time, it's going to come about. And I do think I was one. I was a senior pastor of an evangelical church. You were a leader in a large evangelical church. For me, I looked at the craziness of right-wing Christianity, and mostly, in the Bush era, and let's go bomb Iraq, and I was like, okay, this isn't good that we've married ourselves to an ideology and a political party, but I thought it mostly benign. And I think that was being the white moderate saying, oh, it's not so bad, Dr. King, come on, it'll work itself out. And it really was when I saw the passionate hatred that the culturally white evangelical church had for President Obama and buying into the birther nonsense and all of that stuff that I was like, oh, this is not benign. This is a big, big problem.
And that's been borne out. It's been proven. But yeah, no, that's the mindset. That's the mindset. And I really appreciated, again, in that letter from MLK Jr., him saying, it's not my time. When is my time? When is it? Because he had been told that his whole life. So there's no time like right now. There's no time like the present. I mean, there are times in life to take things by the throat. And I don't mean to use that kind of language of violence, because I'm not talking about violence, but we have got to be proactive. And the biggest proactivity we can do is just to simply speak up.
Yeah. What does that look like? What do you think speaking up looks like to you, Bob?
For me, much like you, being rooted in the evangelical world, it was everything to me. It was my culture, my life, my everything. When I began to speak a different word and speak a slightly different language, I still love Jesus. I still love Jesus, but I'm not buying all the rest. There have been many who have exited my life. So I would encourage anyone who's thinking about beginning to speak up, count the cost. It's worth it, by the way.
Yeah.
It's completely worth it, but you're going to get some pushback from your friends if you're in that world. It's just the way it works.
And my recommendation is really read the Gospels with new eyes and start to say, where would Jesus be? It is the first chapter in my novel of Joseph Comes to Town came out of a real life incident where I saw this defensive marriage rally on the steps of City Hall in my city. Like the mayor of our city and a prominent evangelical pastor standing together on the steps of City Hall, right, begging people to vote against gay marriage, to outlaw gay marriage in the state of California. And then over in the distance, there was a police tape, a do not cross yellow tape, that we see at crime scenes. Do you need to jump outside again, Bob?
No, I'm completely in.
And behind it, the people with the rainbow flag and the, love your neighbor signs. And I just remember thinking, if Jesus were at that event, would he be on the steps with the mayor and the head evangelical pastor, or would he be behind the do not cross tape with the LGBTQIA plus community over there? And there was no question in my mind. No. I didn't have to think about it for a second. There's not a chance in damn hell that Jesus would have been on the steps of City Hall that day. He would have been with those people that the religious think aren't deserving of God's favor.
Well, that's what pissed off the religious leaders. He hung out with those people.
Yeah.
He hung out. He did life with those people.
So people are asking on TikTok your name. That's Bob Prater, and Bob wrote a book, which we have here, a language of healing for a polarized nation. It's backwards on TikTok, I know, but there it is anyway. Sure. And that's a great book, and has been proprietor of a podcast called A Muslim and a Christian Walk into a Studio.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the one where got pretty cool. Yeah, that's more than anything else, a guy who loves people, who loves the planet, love this planet. I'm Doomsday Guys. There was a song when I was a kid that was popular. What a mess the world is in. I wonder who. Ask me, visiting them. Well, I'm not just. I happen to live here. This planet. I love about it. I love the people, and I love Jesus. And if that makes me an enemy of the church, so, I want to just say, so be it.
You're breaking up on us there, Bob. I don't know what's happening. I'm losing you. Are you there?
I'm here. Are you? Okay. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah.
Yeah. Technology. And I have gig.
I'm losing him again. I hate it. He's frozen up. We'll wait and see if he can come back. You're just breaking up there. A bit. So yeah, we'll get Bob back here in a second. Yeah, so this is the time, church, to check it out, to say, is this who we want to be going forward? So what are your thoughts? They're asking again what the book was, and I'll get Bob back on again. It's A Language of Healing for a Polarized Nation. You can get it on Amazon. Somebody else was asking about my book. I don't think I have a copy of it within reach. It's called Joseph Comes to Town, When the Religious Right Becomes Religiously Wrong. And it's my novel of what would Jesus have to say to the Evangelical Church were he back with us today. And let's see if we got you back, Bob. How's your internet now?
I hope it's better. I was saying I pay for gig internet, which is the highest consumer internet you can get. I pay a lot of money. And it happens every once in a while. Guys, this is the book, A Language of Healing for a Polarized Nation. It's written alongside Arnita Willis-Taylor, who was the very first African-American female pastor at Gateway Church in Dallas, 36,000 people. She has some stories in here. And Wayne Jacobson, who is the co-author of a book called The Shack. I think you'll like it. It takes on all the tough stuff.
And The Shack is a little book we might have heard of before. Many of us.
Maybe 24 million sold. You might have heard of it.
So you're hopeful. I'm concerned that and I never thought I would say this in my lifetime, I am concerned that democracy in the United States is in peril. And Christianity, and particularly culturally white evangelical Christianity, is at the middle of it, right in the center of it. And so I'm struggling for hope. My hope is the kingdom of heaven is going to advance no matter what. And a lot of people are seeing the truth, but I'm not sure our culture may not see some chaos first for us to get there. Because if January 6th doesn't wake us up to where we're going and who we are in this, but in fact, I think it's gotten worse. I think we're in a worse place than we were a year ago.
Well, I think we are now. I have to push back on you just a tiny bit.
Okay.
Permission to push back, sir.
Please push back.
Okay. I don't care if we lose democracy. Let me just say that.
Fair enough.
I'm not wedded to a political system. You know, people that know me well know that I'm a pretty big fan of socialism anyway, which is not the opposite of democracy.
The two are not mutually exclusive, by the way.
No, that's true.
At all.
That's true. And I'm reminded of the scripture that says, some trust in chariots, some in horses, but we will remember the name of the Lord our God. So political might means nothing to me. Political might means nothing to me. None of it means anything to me, because the kingdom is going to advance. It's just the way things work. There are enough people. And Paul, I see many of us and many of the people that are watching right now as like sleeper cells that have been planted on the earth that are just waiting for permission to begin to rise up and speak something different.
Now, you mean good sleeper cells, not
good
like
sleeper cells.
Okay.
Yeah, no. Sleeper cells in the right sense of the term. So it's imperative that we begin to speak it within the world that we have influence, whether it's our family, whether it's a church, whatever that influence is. Begin to be vocal. I mean, respectfully vocal, but be vocal.
I agree with you that the kingdom of heaven doesn't need democracy. It doesn't need America. I mean, that's part of the problem of evangelicalism is we believe, like, what is God going to do? I've had people say this to me, like, evil is held back by America. I'm like, what? Where did you come up with that? The American military is holding back evil on earth. Now, yes, we've stopped some pretty evil people at times, but we've also been the evil.
We've perpetrated more than any of us will ever know. I have a pastor friend who told me that he takes a lot of deathbed confessions. Have you ever done that, Paul?
I have not.
So he did, and he sat with a CIA agent years ago who unburdened himself, and he said, "I have killed more people in the name of my government surreptitiously than anyone will ever know." And he said, "And I can't even sleep at night because I see their faces, but I did it in the name of my government."
Yeah.
So we know that we do things like assassinate our enemies, take out problems. Yeah. We do. We're no different than, it's a mob mentality. It's the way mobs do business. We just get rid of our problems.
I remember listening to a podcast about, when we thought Iraq was weapons of mass destruction and that they were sending anthrax to our people, yeah. and they were manufacturing anthrax. And I heard it was a clinician of some sort and he's saying, do you know where Iraq got anthrax? From the United States. We gave it to them. You know who the number one manufacturer of biological warfare weapons are in the world? The United States. Double what the whole rest of the world does combined. We are the propagators of this stuff. So I'm not saying that America, I think we've done a lot of things good in the world. I think, and I do believe democracy is a gift that we should fight for because it does give people a voice. And
I'm not anti-democracy.
Right.
Yeah.
You're just not terrified that it's the
I don't care.
I
just don't care.
Yeah.
The government stuff is secondary, although we're called to be involved in government. So,
yeah.
But I don't go to sleep worrying about it.
I think Christians should be standing up and saying the laws that are being passed in state legislatures to try to make it harder for people of color to vote are anti-Christ. That people like your Congressman, Kevin McCarthy, who right after January 6th stood up and said Donald Trump is responsible for this and now is trying to rewrite history. Christians need to say that is an abomination. That's evil. That's not okay. That's subverting of the truth.
It is
not okay. And particularly from people like Louis Gohmert or somebody else that claims to be a Christian leader. So I just think at very least in our own conversations amongst each other, we have to say, this stuff is not okay.
It's not okay. Yeah. It's not okay. And, you mentioned Robert Jeffress having Donald Trump in recently. There's a very large church in my city, a very large, thousands. And Kevin McCarthy spoke there on a Sunday morning during the holiday season. I cannot even imagine. And I'm positive that the leaders of that church thought nothing of it. Nothing. Because it's just business as usual. And it's insidious the way that we have allowed this to happen. Insidious.
I look at people like McCarthy and just say, like, when do you get to that point that you will bend down and kiss the ring of a man like Donald Trump? It's just, how do you get there? What's the pathway to there? Is power so important? But
pretty intoxicating.
On the hopeful side, yeah, I would say, Christians, let's just take this as a moment to say, is this who we're supposed to be in the world? Can we read about the story of Jesus and say, yes, he would give endorsement to what we're doing? Or is it time to say, let's look at a different way to live? Like maybe we care about people after the umbilical cord is cut, not just before, just some things like that.
Kind of elementary stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Just think if we would have had a teacher that said, love your neighbor as yourself. Wouldn't that have been awesome?
I wish we had just had something like that. That would have been wonderful. That's what we need.
It truly is. I truly am getting down to that very basic, that the command of the Bible is, love God, love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus then told the parable of the Good Samaritan that said, hey, that person that you think of another race, religion, culture that you don't think God likes, that's your neighbor. And how you love that person is how you demonstrate your love for God. And if you can't love that person sacrificially, then you don't love God, period.
He made that statement, by the way. He told that story after being asked by a teacher of the law, an expert in the law, trying to trip him up, saying, oh, really? Who's our neighbor? And he didn't answer. He just told the story of the Good Samaritan. Now, here's what I do. When I read that, I read it as the good Muslim.
Mm-hmm.
I read it as the good gay guy. I read it as the trans. Anyone that we want to demonize.
The good Planned Parenthood director.
Thank you. Good.
The good Democrat. How about that?
In those days, yeah, exactly. In those days, Samaritan was, it was a curse to be a Samaritan. They were the evil stepchildren of Israel. Sort of them and sort of not them. You're not really us.
Yeah.
And so when I look at my friends who are Muslim, when I look at my gay friends, when I look at my trans friends, this is where my mind goes. The good homosexual. How about that for a story? How about that for a story Jesus might tell? Because I think he might tell it that way today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So January 6th is tomorrow. It's a year since the Christian right tried to overthrow our country. Fortunately, they failed, but there is concern that next time around they'll have removed the mechanism that caused it to fail.
Right.
And they may not fail the next time.
They might not.
And I really believe we have an American political party that's that's trying to put mechanisms in place to be a minority ruling party in our country. That if it were happening in an African nation or a South American nation, we would be going down there and putting pressure on them to change what they're doing.
We would send troops in.
We would. Yeah.
And yet it's happening here. And we're not out of the woods by any stretch of the imagination. Not even close. That's okay. Close. That's okay. What a ride.
Yeah. So Christians, we encourage you to think, is it okay, particularly white evangelicals, is it okay to be in a belief system that we are the cultural supreme culture and all need to join our culture to be acceptable?
Right.
And is that okay? And to have that belief system and then marry it to a political party with some justification of banning of abortion as the thing to placate us and help us to sleep at night while we vote evil, incompetent people into office. Is it okay?
Yeah.
And
it's time to hold on tight.
Take this anniversary to think and be introspective and think about it.